All right, guys, welcome back. Hey, I'm really excited about today's podcast. I have Theresa Carrington here, and I don't even want to tell you her background, but it's incredibly impressive. So if heaven exists, she's going way before me. So what you have to hear now is what's the background of all of that, and tell us how you got to where you are, Theresa, and then we'll get into the whole mission of the organization.
Okay. Well, as with everybody, our life is a journey, and my journey has a lot of twists and turns. I started my professional career as a journalist, just straight out of high school. So I had no college degree, still have no college degree, except an honorary one now. So started as a journalist, worked in that industry for 20 years, was highly decorated, very good at my work, but it wasn't fulfilling. I was using journalism as a force for good in the world and righting a lot of wrongs, getting a lot of bad guys, and helping a lot of people. But it just wasn't fulfilling enough. And then I went through a life crisis. And that crisis caused me to take a look at everything around me and look at it through a different lens. And that I'm really here to repay a very, very important debt. And that is a debt of gratitude to those who helped me through that exceptionally difficult time, which is how we met and how I ended up on this podcast.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about that? Like what is it that you feel grateful for, and like what got you started? Like what makes you tick? That kind of a thing.
When I was going through the depths of this crisis, I was a single mom raising two kids, and every day after school, we would get home just as every hustle and bustle life of many of your listeners here. And I'd let in the dog, and the dog would track mud paw prints all throughout the house. And it was this moment of my day that would just, everything that I tried to hold together all day, it would just come unfurled in that moment. And so I said, in order to stop this, I need to build a dog pen. And out of nowhere, men started showing up to help me build this dog pen. And at the base of it, we were laying concrete so the dog wouldn't come in with muddy paws. The very last person to leave that day was a man by the name of Elton Best. And at the end of the project, we're hot, we're sweaty, we're exhausted, and we need parts. So we jump into his green truck and we start rumbling down the brick street of this little tiny town I lived in Illinois. And I am losing it. How can I thank all of these people? Everybody just keeps coming out and helping me, and they're helping me, and I don't know what to do, and how can I thank them? I can never thank them, but I've got all these thank yous to write, and I have this going on next week, and the kids have got that event. And without warning, hard enough to get my attention, but not hard enough to injure me, he slammed on his brakes. And he looked at me, and I knew I had done something wrong. There was just fierceness in his eyes. And he said, "How dare you?" And I said, what did I do? He said, "How dare you?" He said, "You think I'm here helping you for you?" He said, "You're stealing my blessing right now. I am here to try to bless you and to bless myself and to have joy in what I'm doing." And he said, "You're sitting over there stealing it. Stop it." Elton and that brick street and that green truck that day changed how I look at the gift of time, energy, and acumen that people share. I realized that I had gone through much of my life stealing others' blessings, and I needed to make a change and to allow people to help with not only my life, but the new vision that was forming for that life.
It's cool stuff. Now, if I understand it correctly, I think you were adopted. Am I correct about that?
That's right. When I came
Some
onto this
crazy, some
planet,
crazy lady in like Wichita adopted you, that type of thing.
yep, that's exactly right. So when I came onto this planet, remember I said I'm now living my life because I have a lot of debts to repay. Debts like Elton, the man who helped me build that dog pen. But it goes way before that. When I was born to a mother who was incarcerated. She was incarcerated for prostitution. I
Wow.
am the product of a prostitute encounter. And
Wow.
so when I came to this world, I was immediately taken as a ward of the state of Kansas. And life after that, of course, only just was just nothing but turmoil, nothing but violence and turmoil. By the time I land on a farm in South Central Kansas to a foster family, every horror that could happen to a child had already happened to me. And then I landed at the home of the woman I now call my mom in South Central Kansas. And it was there I was raised on a 50-acre farm. And if you could, we ate what we grew. You, we were so poor, completely under the poverty line in this country. She would go on to adopt a total of 5 children on a teacher's salary, a single parent, much of that time. And if we didn't grow it or kill it, we didn't eat it. I didn't buy my first clothing for myself. I didn't have a choice in the clothing I wore until I was a freshman in high school, and I spent my own money on it. Everything came from garage sales. So, but on that farm is where I learned compassion. I learned strength. I learned intensity, that everything there was possible if you worked hard enough, if you tried hard enough. And we were givers, even though we had nothing to give. But there was always extra vegetables from the garden. There was always extra meat from the cattle that we were using as our food. So we were giving, even though we were dirt poor. So being raised in a rural Midwest environment created all of the inner skills I needed to do what I do today. I travel all over the world. We work in the deep, deep rural areas. I can look at a woman who is living in poverty in one of our countries, and I can help her milk her goat. And that's the one thing we have in common.
Wow. That's amazing. So now I'd like to get into it with you. You started the blessings baskets and 10 by 3. So I'm going to build it up as best I can do it, and then you kind of correct me if I'm wrong. All right. So if I understand it correctly, you're in 8 countries, 2 of which I believe are in Asia. The rest are in Africa. And if I understand it, let me build it up. The the first hurdle I see happening is that in most of these countries, it's not legal for the woman to open a bank account in her own name.
That's correct.
It requires a letter from someone in English requiring her to do so. You provide that letter. Then you basically, I would argue, overpay the artisan to weave baskets like the ones behind you right now that you sell at Whole Foods and I believe Lowe's. And the first thing that does, it turns the woman into the economic juggernaut of the family, which ends in most of these countries. It's not only legal to beat your wife, it's actually considered manly to do so. Mm-hmm. So that means spousal abuse ends for that woman, because it's mostly women that do this work. They're mostly illiterate. So therefore, and don't have their own money. So they can't stop the physical abuse until they have their own money, because now she has the money to actually leave the dude if he won't stop it, or he steps in line realizing that she's the breadwinner in the family. That's step 1. Step 2 is that the second thing the woman does with the windfall is she buys educational materials for her children. That means that your organization is helping to end extreme poverty in the world. And I want to throw in some statistical literacy with this. As of right now, we as a world, as humanity, are raising 138,000 human beings a day out of extreme poverty. The reason why I can feel confident in that number is we have been doing that exact number every single day for the last 25 years, which puts us on pace to beat the UN mandate to end extreme poverty in the world by close to a decade. So you can't call them the bottom billion anymore, because they're down to 600 million. So if we end that, ending extreme poverty is the causal factor in 6 scourges that plague humanity, one of which is illiteracy. So we're going to eliminate illiteracy somewhere in the next 20 to 25 years, because the majority of all people who are illiterate in the world are north of 65 years old. The second thing it does is it encourages female empowerment, which is one of the ingredients to create prosperity in the world. The first is compulsory education. The second is female empowerment. The third is democracy. And the fourth, maybe the most important, is something called free trade. So then what happens is that eliminates polio, leprosy, smallpox, malaria, and a half a dozen other scourges that plague humanity. So what you are doing is such incredible work in this world. I don't know that you can actually express how powerful this really is. When I talk about you, especially in my presentations to Vistage, I said, if heaven exists, this woman's going before any of us in this room. You're going there on roller skates. I get choked up thinking about it. And there were times when we had our coaching relationship, there were times that I literally felt I wasn't qualified as a human being to coach you. So it's like you raised my game. It's incredibly inspirational.
Well, you are one of those that gave me strength. There are days that this work gets so hard, and I wonder, can I take another step? Can I do another day? Can I keep going? And then someone like a markparrott comes along and says, yes, you can. And I'm going to lend my network. I'm going to lend my resources. I'm going to lend my podcast to let the world know that you exist. I'm going to bring great people into your circle. So you are a critical pillar in our success. And so many of the people that you've introduced me to over the course of the last few years that we've known each other have become great donors to the organizations, have become great advisors. I've met one of them all the way in Uganda, and we're now working on projects together. So you have had a critical role in what we're doing and helping us get to the next level. For 20 years, we've been pioneering an approach that ends extreme poverty, and we've proven it, and it works. But in order to get it to the next level, people like you are needed at our side. So thank you for doing all that you've already done and what you continue to do. I get choked up thinking about that.
Yeah, it's there's a thing about atheism has a tenet in it that I believe very few people are aware of. And the concept is that if heaven doesn't exist, which, obviously when I'm talking like this, I'm somewhere between the two worlds of understanding. But from the atheistic perspective, it's the universe is not aware we exist. And the earth, we could argue that there are billions of single-celled organisms on each and every one of us attempting to kill us. So that means the world's trying to destroy us and the universe doesn't care. So at least what we could do is care about each other. And then it's like, okay, well, where do you get the greatest impact? Because there's a thing about very few of the very wealthy people that I coach. Like in the case of, we recently did a survey over the last 3 years. So the average net worth of the people that I present to is $40 million.
Wow.
So, and they could be worth about 55 million if they listened to me and then did the work.
Listen to him.
Most of them won't, but the deal is that, and that doesn't include even like the growth that they will have. So what I say to them is that you need to be much, much more skeptical. Because I think one of the reasons maybe you had that crisis of faith being a journalist, especially television, is television journalism cannot tell us the truth. It has to tell us our worldview of the world is correct when it's actually incorrect. Like we don't understand global threat statistics because our ancestors didn't know there was a globe. So it's like we hear things and then misinterpret them on a small village level known as a Dunbar circle, named after Robin Dunbar. So we misperceive the world, and then the press, in order to grab our attention and our eyeballs, has to tell us that our incorrect worldview is correct. So they have to kind of lie to us. So it's where do you find truth? So in the case of these very wealthy people that I coach, very few of them have a relationship with a charity. So that means they're being, in effect, financially irresponsible with their donations. They might be just throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks, that kind of a thing. Or they're doing it maybe for the wrong reasons. But one of the things I teach in my presentations is that Fox News has to lie to us. So MSNBC has to lie to us. They cannot tell us the truth. So they become a little more skeptical after hearing me speak, skeptical even to the point of why should they listen to me? And then as soon as I say that out loud, they go, yeah, like, why should I listen to you, Mark, right? I said, okay, well, now you're getting it. You're supposed to be skeptical.
That's right.
I said, what I do is I make people rich. I make them so wealthy, we have to find them qualified charities that are worthy of existing like we have to find them a qualified charity that they like better than the federal government.
Yeah.
So how do we become philanthropists, but do it in a responsible way? Are you just throwing stuff against the wall, just making sure you get the tax write-off, or are you trying to leave the world a better place? Because I believe at the end of the day that with the CEOs that I coach, they're a rare breed of CEOs. One, when they actually get into Vistage, that's very rare. And then to get to the point where they're looking to continue to grow, despite the fact they're killing it,
Mm-hmm.
the those actually are interested in like, where can I be more philanthropic? So
Yeah.
what I'm doing is helping them to become even wealthier, giving them tax challenges that we have to solve for them by finding them a better charity than they might be dealing with right now. So why don't you tell us about 10 by 3?
So 10 by 3 is a charity. And I want to thank you in advance, as we start this part of our conversation for that good work, because I cannot tell you how much money I see that is given to charities just because they might have a high profile or huge budgets. And that money is just wasted. And for those of your listeners and people who you are coaching and training, the number one question I would ask these business owners is, what is your higher purpose? What is the higher purpose of your business? And the charities that you choose should be in alignment with that. And so if you were to come to us, any of your partners were to come to 10 by 3, that's the first thing we're going to ask them is, what is the higher purpose of your business? What are the things that you're the most passionate about? And I'll give you a great example. We had a company, very large company, come to us, and they are a chemical company, and she loves logistics. That's her whole thing. She untangled logistics for other businesses by getting them what they need when they need it now. And so helping us start a straw bank to help our artisans with their logistics completely spoke to her higher purpose for her company, and off we went. And that's what I would encourage all of your folks to be thinking about. What is the higher purpose of their company? And they need to be finding charities that align with that. And here at 10 by 3, we will align with just about every higher purpose you can think of, because when you are ending poverty, which is what we do, that is our core mission, ending poverty through entrepreneurship, we touch just about every facet of humanity, from education to healthcare, et cetera. So exactly what is 10 by 3? Who are we? What the heck does that mean? 10 by 3 is the name of our organization. We are a certified 501c3, and 10 by 3 is the formula that over the past 20 years we have pioneered that ends extreme poverty. We know when we purchase 10 of these artisan goods a month from an artisan at significantly higher than fair trade wages, what we call a prosperity wage, at least 2.5 times fair trade, another model we invented. We know that that amount of capital empowers the artisan to start at least 3 small businesses, which they are required to do. 10 baskets a month at prosperity wages equals 3 small businesses. Each of those small businesses on average will produce 4 streams of income for the artisan. After 20 years, we've helped more than 8,000 people exit extreme poverty. They've started more than 38,000 small businesses, generating more than 132,000 streams of income into the world's poor, the hands of the world's poor. This is a model that works. It works decisively, and it ends extreme poverity.
Well,
That's
I
what we
think
do.
it's so meaningful to actually listen to this. So what are the struggles that you're having? Because bear in mind, let me just set that up. You and I have discussed this, but I think our audience really needs to hear this too. That when you're doing fulfilling work, it is rarely fulfilling. And then what you want is you want to be able to have a slogan that's like tattooed to the inside of your eyelids. Because when you're rolling your eyes into your head, no, you're going to have to bleep me on this. You're asking yourself, what the fuck am I doing this for?
Yeah.
So that's whether you're a CEO, a business owner, or some type of consultant, or whether you're doing making the world a better place. Hopefully, there's some combination of all of that into why you get out of bed in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is to help the few protect the many. So if it helps the few, I'll give you an example. I did a pro bono keynote for a 501c3 in Ontario, California on Thursday. I flew for 12 hours. So the commute from my front door to there was 12 hours on that Wednesday. because it was 2 flights leaving out of JFK, getting to and from JFK too, and then 12 hours back. It's 24 hours worth of travel to do one 5-minute keynote, just setting them up, showing them statistical literacy for it. And I did it pro bono. So why did I do it? It's because I'm here to help the few protect the many. So, and frankly, behind what your mission is, in the United States, there's only two things that have worsened in the last 124 years. Meaning, like almost all means of death have actually gotten better and better and better and better. This includes lightning strikes. This includes floods, hurricanes, everything. The likelihood of dying from any of those events has decreased exponentially in the 20th century, except for falls. Like, we recently lost my father, he was 96 years old, but he fell and broke his hip and then required surgery because he would be heavily medicated for the balance of his life. And it didn't seem like that was fair to him. So we tried the surgery and it failed. So he ended up having to go through hospice. But the deal is, that's one example that has worsened, and that's easily explainable because of the aging of the population. Falls can be deadly. Right? The other one, which is not easily explainable, is death by poisonings. So
didn't see that coming.
So the category in the CDC that includes poisonings is self-poisonings, which is what overdoses are. And that's what that 501c3. So I just went there just to tell them that. And how I argued that the name of the place was called Cedar House. I said there should be a Cedar House next to every Starbucks in the United States, because the number of people who have died in 1999 from self-poisonings was 12,775 people. The year that we have the most accurate records for, the most recent year, is 2021. There was 102,000. So that's an 8-fold increase in 20 years. You sit back going, and that situation is just worsening and worse. All you have to do is go to San Francisco, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like the zombie apocalypse. So the argument is that I think what we can do is do better. Like you're part of an organization, if you're still with them, called Conscious Capitalism.
Yeah.
I would argue that you got to pay the taxes anyway. So what if you pay the taxes to something you like, or that leaves the world a better place? So that this way it's congruent with why you get out of bed in the morning. So can you tell me why you get out of bed in the morning?
One look at the eyes of our artisans. That's why. Every day that I get out of bed, my life is already exponentially easier than hers. I can count on running water. I can count on indoor plumbing. I can count on heating and cooling. I can count on food. I can count on reasonable transportation, decent transportation. I can count on lights. I can count on the electric. I can count on all of those things. And I get up, and my pathway to the day is exponentially easier than hers. 10 by 3 serves over 3,000 artisans worldwide, and they are all in some stage of extreme poverty, some worse than others, some on the journey with 10 by 3, so their lives are better. Any day that I think it's too hard for me to get out of bed, or that this isn't worth it, I just have to look at their faces, which are everywhere. If you can kind of catch them behind me here, they plaster our building. They're in my heart, in my soul.
If I understand it correctly, they actually come with the actual baskets that they weave.
Yes.
So that they attach that little card, which is brilliant, by the way. And then that actually can create a pen pal relationship between them and the mostly women who buy these baskets. I'm assuming that's the case, because they were only at Whole Foods. Now they're at Lowe's too.
Yeah, you can find us now at Lowe's.com, and before the end of the year, we will be in a select few Lowe's stores. That order is being put. Actually, Lowe's is going to be buying baskets that look very similar to the ones behind me. So yes, in Lowe's before the end of the year, but not every Lowe's. It'll be a select few markets.
Gotcha. Sounds great. But I think what it also does, it kind of, this is going to be a little unusual how to say this, but there's kind of like a conspicuous philanthropy. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things about conspicuousness. Like a friend of mine just bought an Aston Martin. which is I think it's a
I
two.
like a nice car. That's a
I
nice
believe it's
car.
well, as a financial advisor, I don't recommend them, but
Yeah.
I think you recommend them like after they've already depreciated.
Yeah.
Buy a 20-year-old one. So but he bought it. He goes, you know why I bought this car? I said, yeah. And he goes, what do you mean? Because he was going to say one thing, but he could tell from the tone of my voice it was not going to be what he thought.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because why didn't he buy a Ferrari? Why didn't he buy a Porsche? Why didn't he buy 10 Fords? You know what I mean? So what it's something called a Zahavian signal. It means that our world. So this is kind of the darker side of human nature. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the good side of human nature, because sometimes those two things are intertwined. So what I like about the battle strategy is, for those business owners that are listening to this, like, how do we market better? That what it does is it sends to the world that I have what's referred to as excess fitness. So what happens is it actually makes us feel really good when we're donating something or we're contributing to the world other than us, because the perfect form of philanthropy would be you don't know where the money is going, and you don't know the person who receives the benefit, and they don't know who you are. That's the ideal form of philanthropy. Yet we don't do that. Like universities don't name buildings on their campuses after nobody. Right. So that's a form of conspicuous philanthropy. What I'm arguing is that you can do that. You can capture that too, that side of it. But there's also like an elation we feel. At least that's what Thomas Jefferson called it. He was referring to a rarely named emotion where we feel a little taller, like our chest puffs out a little bit. We feel better about ourselves. So when I was running the volunteer men's organization here on Long Island, we went from 9 men to 650 men internationally. So there's still like 125 men in Toronto. And locally, what we would do is like re-roof the barn for an autistic children's horse farm. They do a therapy for. You cannot be downstairs mentally when you're doing something like that.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be some special type of rat bastard to be downstairs mentally when you're taking care of autistic children, even if they don't know who you are and don't know that you ever did it. So there's a way to kind of like take a person who's in a rough spot mentally and increase through an artificial win. And I think that's the reason why when we go to church, when we go to, when we donate, when we do things that are somehow making the world a better place, we feel legitimately better. I think that a psychologist would agree with me here that the same hormones are released in our minds that when we win the lottery. So, and then legitimately, we're only here for a short period of time. I'm not a believer in reincarnation, so I believe we're only going around this world once. So how do we leave a legacy? Well, one is children, right? So that's the reason why children make us feel so good, especially grandchildren. So we're what people call grandchild maximizing optimization machines. Let's call it that way. That's why what I'm told is from grandparents, they feel the best with their grandchildren. Like my father had a shirt. Maybe I get the putting slogans on shirts from my dad. But he said that grandchildren are great. It's the reward for not having killed my children.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that not only does it make you feel better, it actually leaves the world a better place, and it goes from like the dark side of human nature and the positive side of human nature. It covers both. How do we leave this world a better place? And if I remember correctly, you said to me a while back in an early conversation we're having, it was to empower others, which is pretty damn cool.
Yep. And that's what we do here every day. You were talking about those incredible poverty statistics earlier. We can end extreme poverty. We can create a more equitable world, and it does not take a huge mountain of money to do it. But the recipients have to have skin in the game, and that is part of the 10 by 3 model. Is they are required to start those 3 businesses because we know that it is a framework that is going to create generational wealth, and it's going to change entire generations. And being around now 20 years doing this work, that's what we're seeing. We're starting to see the daughters starting to weave, and they're having babies, and we see now entire families changing. Back to your point earlier about this effect that you were talking about, I've already forgotten what you called it. We see that here at 10 by 3. We're based in St. Louis, Missouri. We have about a 20,000 square foot warehouse behind me here. And we work with the judicial system in our county. And so folks will get sentenced to community service. So we can all agree that whatever brought them there, their life is maybe not in the place that they would want it to be. And suddenly they find themselves walking into the door of our building performing community service. And one of the tasks we have them do is prepare the baskets for shipment, but also attach these cards. And most of the people will tell you that seeing how another person is living, understanding a bit about their life, has put their own life into perspective. They leave feeling better about their situation, that they can overcome it. Like if that lady in Madagascar can weave that basket and make life better for her family, I can do this. The vast majority of our community service folks who come through our doors, we'll service hundreds of them throughout the year. Most of them will tell you they left feeling better, that push that you just talked about.
Yeah, I used to call it the strangest secret, that there is a selfish benefit in selfless work. So which countries are you operating in now?
Yeah, so we are in 7. You mentioned 8 earlier, but we are in 7 countries. So we're in Ghana, Uganda, Togo, Kenya, Madagascar, India, Bangladesh, and who am I missing? I'm missing somebody. So Ghana, Togo, Uganda, Kenya, Madagascar, India, Bangladesh. Those are our active countries today.
Yeah. So, and I would imagine you're seeing the community strengthen too, because the deal is there's such skin in the game,
Yeah.
It's really tremendous.
Very much so. Very, very much so.
Let me frame what is considered extreme poverty. It's living on less than $1.90 US a day. So what happens is now when you erase that, then all of a sudden it creates a new poverty line. But one of the things that I get somewhat in trouble for, but I'm still going to continue to say it, is I don't believe in the United States we have any problems. I think, you're born in Somalia, you got problems. So you got cancer, okay, I'll cut you a little slack. So what happens is it always comes down to what are we comparing things to? And when you can compare, like look at those pictures of all those ladies that you put in with the baskets, they're all smiling too. Yeah. And I got a nagging suspicion that you're actually teaching them how to become literate, because they have to actually be able to use email and be able to respond to these letters that they get on occasion from the mostly women who buy these baskets at Whole Foods, etc. So what I think about that is like, it's kind of an obvious way that someone's doing some good in the work, and they're really beautiful baskets. I mean, you sent me a couple, and we use them on a regular basis.
Yeah, they are very beautiful.
Yeah, so it's like the artisanship of it is really strong. But what I think might make sense and maybe help you with getting donations from all of this, because although this is a startup podcast, it goes out to all our social media and our email list, which is a little over 30,000 CEOs now.
Wow! So, congratulations, that's amazing.
Well, I'd like to get them to be able to contribute to this. Maybe.
So would we?
Yeah. Now the demographics are mostly, it's about 80% male. The situation is, so maybe what they're doing is they're looking for a gift for for their spouse, or maybe something to actually make a donation, that type of thing. So you need funds, because if I understand it correctly, 100% of the proceeds of the sale of the baskets go to the artisans.
Yeah, asterisk. It gets a little complicated in there, so let me explain exactly how it works. 10 by 3 pays for all of our baskets up front. They're all paid for. So when you purchase a basket, you're paying for the basket we bought, and you're helping us raise the cash flow to go back and do it again. So that's how it works. So we're going to charge a profit to clients like Whole Foods and Lowe's, and that profit margin that we're charging, that helps us run the organization. Unlike most nonprofits, we are not 100% donor driven. Remember, I told you that we require our artisans to have skin in the game. We require that of ourselves as well. We don't think that it's right to be 100% reliant upon, how can I turn to a woman like Leonidi and say, hey, you got to go start 3 businesses and be self-sufficient. And we as an organization are not trying to get ourselves there as well. We have to do the same thing. So the organization raises about 80% of all the funds we need ourselves. We still need to raise over $500,000 a year to help us meet our budget. Now, that's not planning for growth. We plan for growth. We need actually more than that. So that's where how our revenue model works. And in terms of the letters that you're writing, you mentioned that we're teaching them literacy. It's true, because women like Leonida, you can see by the way she's written her name here, she's probably never held a pen in her life. So for all of our artisans, we're teaching them how to write their name. We have someone who comes with a computer and reads the letter from English into their local language. They narrate a response, and then we type that in for them. But they're made aware of how the letters are exchanging hands. So when you donate to 10 by 3, we use those donations to go back and purchase more products from our artisan. And then the revenue that we raise from it helps support the operations of the organization.
Well, that's amazing. There's a couple of things that we kind of bring up regularly in Vistage. And one of them is that when I do trip over a 501c3, because it's kind of rare, like who has the budget to actually be a member, sometimes they can work it out with like maybe one of their major donors to get them into Vistage and pay for their Vistage membership, that type of thing. And they call out a donation. But there was one woman in New York City named Norma Rosenberg. She started a special group for all the 501c3s in the United States. They could join her group for free in addition to their Vistage membership. She also started Women in Vistage, really powerful woman.
Sounds like an amazing lady.
Well, she's about this tall. Right? So
My height.
if she was in the room with me, you'd see like a puff of white hair.
Yeah.
But like really just amazing wisdom coming from her. Like I remember the first meeting I had in Manhattan with all the chairs. It's called a VCG. It's a Vistage chair group. And she waited for this moment when all the men stopped talking, and then she just dropped this wisdom bomb that hit the ground like a grenade. So, but she the only time I ever saw her get upset is when a 501c3 was not run correctly.
Yeah.
So now she's former, I don't know if it's called Big Six or what have you, but she's an accountant. So she's like a reformed accountant at this point. Running a couple of groups in Manhattan, and really just a powerful person. But what she said to me specifically about the 501c3s kind of stopped me in my tracks. She said, the only difference between a qualified 501c3 and a regular business is the accounting.
100% correct.
What
we run ourselves as a business. Yeah. We run ourselves as a business.
So, and just for everyone else to understand this is, so a for-profit institution is in business to make a profit. In the case of a 501c3, it's in business to make a surplus. So, but sometimes what that's required is to actually is to create a foundation around it. So that this way you create so much of a surplus that creates enough money that can be invested, and then that spits off to you your operating capital on a regular basis. So I'm going to have a couple of people on future shows that walk us through how to build trusts around this, because there are ways, I'll allude to this just a little bit now, there are ways that you can actually prevent yourself from having to pay capital gains taxes. Now what you do is you set up a trust, put the business in the trust, and then that trust sells the business to the acquirer. And then what ends up happening is you can transform for tax purposes that sale into the equivalent of an installment sale. And it can be one installment 30 years from now. Then what you do is you wrap it with a sophisticated life insurance trust, and then make the life insurance intentionally defective. Normally that's a no-no. Like if you came to me with a life insurance policy that was like that, it would be called a modified endowment contract. That's a no-no. But if you take this sophisticated trust and you attach it to a qualified 501c3, you regain the tax-free status, but it makes it cheaper and easier to maintain and qualify for. So you're getting a benefit out of it. Now the 501c3 or the charity in this case would have to receive a stipend each year and then benefit from some of the death benefit. It's a way that you can make your donors hyper donors. And so that's something I'm very interested in knowing more about. Now, I don't do that type of work, but I got guys that do. That's where I farm that business out to. So I'm gonna interview them to get them whatever they can say on the air type of thing. But where I want the ultimate benefit to go is your 501c3.
That would be amazing. We use donor funds to make us stronger, to make us more financially resilient, to make us more sustainable. We are marching towards sustainability, and there are things that we can't, that cannot be budgeted for. And I'll give you one perfect example. I just came back from Bangladesh, where we have put a young woman in leadership. Her quality control team is all men. She told them, don't do this, do this, do this. But because she is, quote, a small girl, because she's not been married, she doesn't have children, her quality control team was not listening to her. I just went to Bangladesh. I had to substandard out over 3,000 units that will not be shipped to the United States. And that is a loss to 10 by 3 of $30,000. We then turned around, fired people on her staff, hired new people, got her into coaching, executive coaching, so that she can, believe in herself and not what society is telling her is that she's a small girl, etc. We have some videos on this that we can share with your audience. These are the types of women empowerment that we're doing. These are the types of things that don't appear in a budget anywhere because they just happen. And so when you do donate to 10 by 3, we're going to do that as a team. We're going to make sure that we're attacking your higher purpose. Listen to what Mark is teaching you. Let's not give the government more of the money. Let's give it to nonprofits like 10 by 3 that are running themselves like a business, creating true sustainable impact in the world, and doing our part to grow your money. Remember, I told you that when we sell that product in the United States at a profit, we're utilizing those funds to run the admin for the organization. So any dollar that's going into the hands of the artisans, it produces a product. That product then produces revenue for the organization. So it's like doubling your money. So as you're listening to Mark and creating incredibly strong businesses that are going to be then philanthropic endeavors, make sure that the nonprofits you're partnering with understand your higher purpose, run themselves like a business, make them show you how your donation is going to help them become more sustainable so that you can turn around next year and give your money to somebody else and help them do it all over again. And that's what you find with 10 by 3.
So tell me about, because you kind of touched on it right there. The reason why I started chuckling was something you said to me before we actually went live and started to record. So tell me what you told me when you first got on the call.
Well, I was joking with Mark that my hair has gone completely gray since the last time he and I saw each other. It was starting to go gray at our last meeting, but now I just got the bottom half cut off and now I'm gray. You know that when I started this organization 20 years ago, and I went into, again, we work in extremely rural locations around the world. And in Ghana, it's run by chiefs. And I remember being there, imploring the artisans, please, the quality has got to be there. We changed the paradigm, by the way. You used to have to, if you bought a product from a nonprofit, it was typically really crappy quality. And I would not put up with that. I said, it has to be the very best. So I was in Ghana just talking until I had no more voice about quality and on-time delivery, how it had to be. And I remember looking at our director at the time and said, no one is listening to me. What is going on? Why can't I get it through their head? And he, without even looking up, he said, because you're a small girl. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, you don't have gray hair yet, and you're a woman. And so until you get gray hair, you're not going to be listened to. And at that point, we seriously looked into dyeing my hair gray just so my voice could be heard. And now today it's not a problem. So you see.
There you go. Well, I can relate to the gray stuff,
Yeah.
I'm getting there
you
myself.
Wear it better.
Yeah,
so,
well,
yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe I grew up, I was a towhead, so maybe blonde hair takes a little longer than
I wanted to also know if I could use this opportunity to tell you about a business challenge that we're facing and see whether or not maybe some of your listeners, I'm sure you'll be able to put contact information for me after this podcast. They might be able to come alongside and help. 10 by 3, as you know, deals in handcrafted goods, which means our cash flow timeline is 6 to 8 months, depending on the country and depending on the product. We order it here. Then it has to get made, it has to get shipped, then we ship it out, then it gets paid for, and then we get our money. But 10 by 3 is paying at the time the artisan turns it in. Long cash flow. The second thing is our number one client is Whole Foods Market. We're in most of their stores around the country, not all, but most. And we have to constantly keep our pipeline full in order to service those stores. We don't have a contract with Whole Foods. Last Friday, we got a very distressing email from Whole Foods. Annually, we sell about $1.3 million worth of products to Whole Foods Market. Most of that money is destined back to the artisans. Some of it helps cover the operations, as we've talked about. And the buyer informed us that the current line, that line that's producing 1.3 million in sales and profit for Whole Foods, they're going to phase it out. They're going to sell it down. They're stopping it. In fact, she was going to tell the stores to stop carrying our product. Keep in mind, a year ago, I was stuffing my pipeline full for those expected orders. So right now, you find me in a cash flow crisis. Their sales have started slowing without warning. 10 by 3 expended the money to buy the inventory to supply their stores almost a year ago. We were waiting for that money to come in now to purchase. We've got a cash flow crisis, and it's a bigger crisis than that. We may be facing an inventory glut. It's now just about noon Central Standard Time. In 1 hour, I have a meeting with Whole Foods. But any business owner listening to this can understand what happens when a major partner pulls out on you without warning. Yeah. And in our case, the impact is catastrophic. It's catastrophic to us as an organization because a vast majority of our sales come from Whole Foods. And it's catastrophic for our artisans who are counting on those orders again tomorrow. So from your audience, I have a couple of asks. The first ask is, if you know anyone in major retail that might be interested or we could be the right partner for, please contact me immediately. I have to offset the sale of almost 60,000 products, and I need it to happen now. Do you have a contact at Target? Do you have a contact at IKEA? Do you have a contact at fill in the blank that could help 10 by 3 find a new market for these products that are already in our pipeline or already in our warehouse? The second ask is, we're unbankable. A bank will not give us a loan. Would any of your listeners consider making a loan to 10 by 3? Of course, best is a gift, but at bare minimum, could you maybe co-sign a loan with us as we work to get the cash flow we need to get to the point where Lowe's and their orders begin to take effect and the flywheel keeps going? Well, so you find us in crisis right now.
I would ask for two things. So the deal is that one, even if that phone call goes better, because if I understand correctly, they've actually threatened this a couple of times in various ways.
This time it was in writing, and it's exceptionally serious.
Okay, so the deal is that so what we need is diversification anyway.
Sure, absolutely we do.
All right, the second thing is you need those donations even if this goes away. And the reason why is because you came to me one time and said, I need $200,000. I said, no, you need $4 million. And you remember that?
You're and right. You're always thinking bigger.
$4 million would be nice, but I need $200,000 right now.
Yeah, girl raised in poverty. Girl has a hard time thinking that big every time. And yes, you're right.
The reason why you need $4 million as a foundation is because $4 million invested properly, we kick off $200,000 a year.
Absolutely.
In perpetuity.
So
what happens is that's what we need in order to make sure this very worthy 501c3 continues. So I'll give you an example. In fact, when I met you, there was I met you at a Vistage meeting, if you remember, a number of years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, but deal is that maybe 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, pre-pandemic for sure.
It was definitely pre-gray hair, I think, for both of us.
Yes, exactly.
so there was a man in the room that basically, when we looked at his challenges around diversification, they were the exact same as yours. Yeah. So what had happened was pre-2008, he had one client, one customer, really. And he had gotten up to 25 million in revenue. And then that one customer went bankrupt because it was, I believe, GM. Oh. And the idea, this was in 2008, 2009, they went bankrupt, had to be bailed out by the federal government. So then what happens is he finally gets the business all the way back up to 25 million. And he still has one customer. Oh. So what he doesn't understand is that company's not worth anything. It's so risky. The value, there's a relationship between valuation of a company and how much risk it is. So this is the reason why publicly traded companies are so valuable, because the risk is so low in comparison to all other investments. So the reason why is because they're completely liquid. You could sell the thing the next day and someone would buy your piece, unless you're, such a shareholder that you tank the stock. What ends up happening is, if you're just a normal everyday person and you got 50 grand in that company as part of your portfolio, if the let's assume it's well diversified portfolio, the valuation of it is high because it's liquid. So the perception comes down to something called investor expectations. So if the investor perceives the investment as liquid, big, safe, the valuation is much higher because there's less risk involved. In a privately held company, there's more risk involved because it is not liquid, it is not big, it is not safe. So therefore, the valuation is low. It's one of the ways that they can actually play what's called an arbitrage. In your case, because of the lack of diversification, you're experiencing, you're going through what I would call a holy shit moment.
Oh yeah, it's big.
Yeah,
it's big.
And frankly, if you're going to eat a turd, you don't nibble at it.
Yeah.
So the idea here is how do we raise that? I think there's a combination of two things. One is, there's going to be someone listening to this that will be empathetic to your cause, maybe even be willing to float that loan, co-sign, or better yet, donate, because they're in a position to do so and they want to leave the world a better place. That's where the legacy comes in. In addition to that is, how do we get you in more stores? So what I'm going to argue is, the two requests you've had for the financial help, but also we need diversification strategy. And if you're open to it, I'm open to it too. Anyone listening on this knows from having seen me speak, I preach diversification because it makes you less risky as an organization, and therefore more valuable. So it's, how do we make you recession resistant too? So there's a whole slew of strategies. So what I'm going to do is offer my time to you for free as soon as you can have a conversation after you have that conversation.
And to some of your teaching already, we've diversified our product line. This year, 10 by 3 will be launching 129 new products, and many of them are for the pet industry. So pet beds, pet toys, etc. So we started preparing for this. I mean, a big shift to diversify our product line. And so if you know someone who owns any pet stores, like we noticed that PetSmart is looking at our brand through an online marketplace that we're a member of. So we'll take all of those suggestions. And we're also, if you're really astute, you should have been asking, as you're listening to this podcast, well, where's our board? 10 by 3's board is in need of new members. It's in need of members who can lead, members in the retail industry space that understand the fickleness of retail. So all of the above. So come join our walk, whether it's financially, whether it's buying a basket, whether it could be a board member volunteering your time like Mark does. I mean, for him to volunteer his valuable time, that is incredible knowledge for 10 by 3, and it's a seed well planted, because we need all the acumen we can get. Now, if you want to end poverty in the developing nation, I'm your girl. But some of the strategic business moves that Mark is talking about, that's not my strength. That's not my core strength. I can milk a goat, but that's kind of where that stops. But I've got all this other knowledge over here. So bring it. Bring your knowledge, bring your acumen, bring your time, bring your energy, bring your talent. And we'll make sure that that's really going to create an incredible legacy for you and those you love.
Well, I can tell you this. I've done this in the past. I'm still doing it right now. But after a certain level of coaching, what I do is, I have the person who's been with me now for 3 years as a coaching client. I don't have him pay me a $650 fee. I have him donate to you.
And he does. We're so grateful for him.
But I'm going to make that offer to anyone listening here today too. So if you're willing to make the donation to Theresa's 501c3, 10 by 3, I will coach you for free.
That's an incredible offer, Mark. Thank you.
So the in the meantime, though, is I'd like to see, how do we get this more steady eddy? So this is the suggestion I'm going to make. I'm going to send this podcast out and that offer out to all 30,000 of our connections and our CEOs on our mailing list. We actually have 3,000 of their cell phone numbers too. So I'll make this available to all of them. I'd like you to do the same with your email list for your
Yeah,
type of
we
thing.
will.
And then this way, your donors don't necessarily know me, and my guys don't
Sure.
necessarily know you. So at least we can expand that, about how do we increase the value of that. But it goes back to the single greatest thing we can do worldwide is end extreme poverty. And partially the reason why is that increases female empowerment and it pacifies males. So now this, you don't hear about these things because frankly, it doesn't piss off liberals and it doesn't piss off conservatives. It makes both happy. And the reason why is because liberals, the main morality that they base their view of the world around is care and harm. They want to minimize harm and increase care. In the case of conservatives, they want that also, but it makes conservatives more happy because, you got a hot spouse at home and a nice car in your driveway. You're not strapping a bomb to your butt to blow anybody else up, right?
That's true.
So the idea is, how do we make the world a better place? It's how we do it. Unfortunately, it goes unreported. And yet we have the lowest level of extreme poverty ever in the world history. 90, 100 years ago, everybody was poor.
Yeah.
Poor and kind of sick, according to Hans Rosling. Now there's very few people left. What we can do is leave this world a better place. And partially because of it helping female empowerment, that pacifies males. It makes the world a safer place. So it's like, how do we get people to start investing in their future? And this goes, even if you're strong lefty, the idea is as soon as someone comes out of extreme poverty, they then focus on the future.
That's
They're
right.
not sitting living hand to mouth. Now they want to take care of the environment. They want to take care of their children. They want their children educated. Like, it's just like this unbelievable flashpoint in the causal factors that are scourges against humanity. It eliminates them.
Yeah. And you talk about those 600 some odd thousand that you mentioned earlier. They are living in the hardest to reach places on the planet. So it's extreme rural that is still living in that extreme poverty level. And I believe that we are all uniquely equipped. And I grew up rural. And so working along roads that have no names in places that you've never heard of, that's where we shine. And that is where the greatest need and the greatest work is being done. And it's the hardest. It's why most nonprofit organizations who are working on poverty don't work there. It's more expensive. It's harder to get to, but it is where the population lives that is still existing in extreme poverty. And they are who need our help the most. And it's where we are expert.
Well, so there's this great book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read it, but it's really powerful. It hovers around my passion for statistical literacy. So, and one of the things that I get quite frustrated with, and people do not like my presentation because 98% think I walk on water, 1.79% absolutely hate what I have to teach them. And the reason why is because they're kind of mired in their own political ideology. So what happens, though, is that I've been seeing something as a real threat to the United States. And it goes back to the statement here that politics makes us stupid. That the idea is that we're almost like born bad lawyers. We decide way too quickly which side of the argument we're on, and then we seek only the first evidence that proves our side of the argument correct. So we have this unprecedented access to research tools, never before in American history, but we don't know how to do it. We're too busy politicizing the concept to actually understand it well enough to be correct about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's a blind spot for everybody. So one of the things I see on a regular basis is misguided activism. And I know this because I was raised by misguided activists. And, that I was the youngest. And I don't know about you, but I used to sit around and kind of watch my older siblings and go like, I had this mental notepad going, all right, that's repeatable. That's really freaking stupid. Don't do that. And so I learned from all of their lessons about what to do and what not to do. And one of the things I was raised by 5 of them. I'm the 7th of 7. So 5 of the household were real activists behind things. And I thought because they were the adults, they must know what they're talking about. Not realizing that they were mired in their own political ideology. They were so blinded by it, they actually couldn't point their energies in the right direction. But you are. And one of the things I see is that take that misguided activism and turn it into actual passion for leaving the world a better place. That's what I'm so impressed with about how you figured out all of this and have kind of like, I don't know what you call it. It's like you backdoored your way into leaving the world a better place, and then had to overcome. How do I turn from a journalist into really a business owner and point the energies in the right direction? I believe you deserve to be supported.
Thank
Just
you
want to
very
thank
much.
you for
That's
everything.
very kind of you. Thank you so much. And I do appreciate all the support. And of course, the artisans do as well. And, being around 20 years, I had to look myself in the mirror and say, does this organization deserve to continue? Should it continue? If it continues for the next 20 years, is it my ego? Is it about me? And all I had to do was take one look at Leonidi and say, it must continue, because we have pioneered a formula that ends extreme poverty, period. And if we have something that powerful that can truly move humanity forward, we are obligated to share it with as many people as we can. We want others to adopt this model. If you have other nonprofits that are working in the poverty space and are interested in doing that, contact us. We have a patent pending to patent the approach that we're using. Why would we do that? We're not doing it to monetize it. We're doing it to protect it. Because if you do it this way, it'll work. And when, not if, when, patent office doesn't like us at the moment, we're in appeal. But when we get that patent, we'll be the only organization in the world with a patented approach to end poverty. And again, we patented it so that it can't be corrupted. If you're going to use it, you're going to use it this way because it friggin' works. And let's go get this. Let's go get it. Let's get the job done. Let's beat that model, that UN model that you were talking about. Let's get it done.
All right, so there's a few things I want to continue our conversation. I don't know if you have time for me today, but I want to thank you for what you're doing. I think this is a perfect place to end the podcast. If you have a few more minutes for me, I'd love to have a conversation with you. It can be later on today after your meeting.
Okay, yeah, I think I need to get ready for this Whole Foods Market meeting because so much rides on it, and it's in under an hour now.
Sounds great. All right, well, good luck with all of that, and then let's talk later.
Thanks. Okay, lots of love. Take good care. Big hug.
Thanks again.